Ties between the U.S. and China in the spotlight at the Munich Security Conference. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to hold talks with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on the sidelines of the meeting as both seek to manage heightened U.S.-China tensions. The meeting is expected to follow up on the summit between U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping last November, when both sides agreed to reopen military-to-military lines of communication and work together on transnational challenges. Since then, they have taken steps to restart cooperation in several areas. But ties remain tense over a string of issues, not least America's dealings with Taiwan and spats in the South China Sea. Trent Murray has more now. He joins us live from Munich. Trent, the fact that they are meeting is encouraging. Can we also then expect any major outcomes from these talks between Mr. Wang and Mr. Blinken?
Well, I think if we look, Jill, at just how difficult the relationship between Washington and Beijing has been in recent years, the fact that the pair are going to have a discussion at all, I think, will be seen as a diplomatic success. This Munich Security Conference likes to say that its motto is all about building peace through dialogue. And it is these types of meetings, both formal and informal, that they really pride themselves on. But we do know that the pair are having discussions at a time where the relationship between the two superpowers does remain incredibly complex. It was about a year ago that the relationship really nosedived, if you will, after that spy balloon was shot down by US fighter jets in American airspace. But since then, the White House has been touting some of its successes with China, including the creation of a counter-narcotics group, that military-to-military contact that you mentioned, and also working together around governing rules to do with artificial intelligence. So I know many leaders here, also many journalists from around the world, will be keenly watching to see what the readout is from the meetings between the pair. The last time they spoke was in October of 2022, which of course then set up that infamous important summit between President Xi and President Biden in California. Today's discussions could just pave the way for another phone call between the two presidents. We are being told that is already on the agenda for some time in the Northern Hemisphere spring.
Now, at the security conference proper, there's much ground to be covered, from the wars in the Middle East to Ukraine. How likely are tensions between the US and China to cast a shadow over some of these discussions?
Look, I think it will certainly play a major role, and it will definitely be a very big talking point, not just for the American and the Chinese delegations, but the many others that are here. We know that it's not just Vice President Kamala Harris, which is here with Secretary Blinken, but Chancellor Scholz is here. We know India's foreign minister is here, the Canadians, many European countries. It's a huge turnout, and so I think they will be all working on many of the issues and challenges that they're trying to build conclusions to, or to try and solve, rather. I think what is interesting is that what we've seen in recent years is some of those European and Middle East challenges are ones that in the past necessarily Beijing may have not been too involved with at a diplomatic level, but increasingly China is having an influential voice, especially in the Middle East. And so I think when issues like Israel, Gaza, Iran come up on the agenda, we may just see a little bit more input from China around trying to solve some of that diplomatically, which I think will be quite welcome, especially for the Europeans who quite often push for the need for a multipolar world where other nations have a strong role to play at the diplomatic negotiating table.
And what more can you tell us, Trent, about hopes by some that the security conference might add pressure on Israel to halt its ground offensive in parts of Gaza?
Well, look, what I can tell you, certainly speaking to European diplomatic sources, is there is a real sense of trepidation and concern around what could be about to happen in Gaza, with Israel signalling it's going to launch a military offensive in Rafah, the sort of last remaining city that they've not yet fully embedded themselves into. They are saying that that could just be a humanitarian disaster. In fact, the Germans are saying Israel just needs to evacuate people from there if they're going to go ahead with that. The German foreign minister said they can't just expect civilians plans to, quote, disappear into thin air. And so what we know is that there are a number of meetings taking place here. And in fact, there is a huge Middle Eastern delegation here, foreign ministers from Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt and others, as well as Israel's president and foreign minister. And I think what they will be hoping to do over the next couple of days, certainly the Europeans and the Americans, will be to use this time to just really try and talk to Israel about what the consequences would be of a major Rafah military operation and to try and do what they can to prevent the humanitarian catastrophe there from spiralling even further out of control.
Trent, thank you for that. Trent Murray reporting live from Munich there.